The Admiral was not happy that he had to show up at the facility. His shuttle came down very quickly and landed fairly hard with a thump. Immediately exiting the shuttle and walking into the facility, he made his way straight towards the facility manager's office, pushed through the door, right through with his guards in tow, immediately saying, "I'll cut to the chase. We need your research and your facility." "Well, hello to you too," the facility manager says. "Now the pleasantries are out of the way, calm down and tell me why you're here." "I'm here because Space Command is very interested in the research you are conducting and believes it is in the best interest of humanity. To that end," at that moment, the two pixies are actually brought in, being carried by their mount. The facility manager simply turned and said, "You were saying?" "I was saying, to that end, the two flying creatures here are to be confiscated and taken to another location for further study." The two pixies, reading their mount's minds, immediately take flight and try to hide behind their host. Dr. Williams stands in front of them, guarding them with her body, and the security guard stands in front of her, definitely ready to strike at anyone who comes at them. The facility manager says, "That is not something I would ever consider." "You should," said the Admiral. "Either you order the surrender of the creatures, or we will be forced to take them by force." The facilities manager stood up and said, "The idea of forcing a parent to surrender their child to the state for some sort of greater good, which I'm sure is going to be the next thing coming out of your mouth, is a practice long abandoned, and for good reason. This is becoming less of a request for every moment that ticks by," the Admiral says. The security guard jumped in. "With all possible respect, sir, you will have the devil's own task taking my son. Besides, even though you believe that we're stupid, we know exactly why you're really here. Just like any other politician with a rank, the only thing you care about is the contracts, the department contracts. That's what you're after. If a simple bonding, which is what we have done, can change someone like me, who is now strong enough to be his own biological exosuit, the ones that give you kickbacks are going to lose money. A lot of money. Meaning, yeah, you and your masters will now not make as much. How am I doing? Am I hitting the head of the nail, or what?" The Admiral, a bit disgusted, turns towards the guard and said, "You question my honor, my integrity?" The guard simply responds, "I'm not questioning your honor. Since you're demanding I surrender my child to the state, I'm simply denying your honor's existence. You have no say in this matter." And then he simply turned his head towards those behind him. "Marines, take this man into custody." From the group of Marines, you suddenly heard, "Stand down!" The voice echoed so much that many even flinched at this sudden burst. They suddenly looked over and see what was going on, as this one Marine seemed to push past his brethren and walked straight up to the guard with his weapon down. Standing in front of the guard, he raised the visor on his helmet, exposing his face. Then he raised his mechanical arm, placing it on the guard's shoulder, tapping it slightly, and said, "I've got you, brother." Then he turned towards the Admiral. "This man risked his life to save me and the rest of my team. I cannot in good conscience detain, arrest, or assault him." And as he says this, 3 more armed Marines step forward, turn around, and stand between the Admiral and the pixies along with their mounts. The Admiral, frustrated, "You will all stand down before you will end up before a captain's mast." The Marines simultaneously said, "No, sir." "You all have no idea the In that moment, a sudden sound comes across, the telltale sound of a dropship coming in so hot that it actually shook the facility as it passed by. And at that moment, alarms start blaring, and the Marines and Admiral are there confused at what exactly is going on. Are they under attack? What's going on? The facility manager then yells, "It's time for you and your people to go. Just leave. Now." The admiral simply yells, "What?" The manager, already making his way to the door, said, "That sound means incoming wounded personnel, most likely with need of containment. Now take your people and go." With that, the entire facility turns into organized chaos. As the admiral is quickly escorted out, he can see dozens of injured and wounded coming in. Many are still bleeding on the floor as they're brought past on gurneys or being carried in. Some are even missing limbs, and even a few with strange wings that seem to come out of their backs as they are ushered past. As the facility gets to work, the pixies decide to stay out of everyone's way, stay up high, and watch. They wanted to see what was going on. The armored marines that had helped them out before immediately began to work with other armored humans that were coming in. They looked over at these new ones, and they couldn't see what was going on. Were these the same ones? They were similar, for sure, but it seems as though they had much more bulky armor. As they watch, it seems as though all of them instantly bond with each other as they work to save the lives of those that were brought in. They listen close to the humans explain what happened, and they can piece everything as they hear all the different stories seemingly at the same time. On the Pixies' homeworld, a battalion of human army soldiers are set up to protect the research outpost set up to study the planet, its flora, and of course, its fauna. Everything was progressing very smoothly, so smoothly in fact that a woman volunteered to let herself become a mount. The idea was to see the difference between the homeworld and the facility, if there was a difference in outcome. Also, there was an elderly human man who volunteered to become a mount as he desired a positive outcome. As it turned out, they both received it. In the planet's atmosphere, it seems that the symbiotes are able to function even better than on the facility, and they seem to be much more efficient in bonding, much more efficient in taking in nutrients, much more efficient in actually fixing them. So much so that the same changes that Dr. Williams experienced, the female mount received, yet much faster. The male seemed to gain so much of his youth back that a few of the humans were actually finding him unrecognizable in just about a week. The results were so promising that rumors spread, and they spread across the HoloNet so fast that nobody could put a lid on it. Also, some information was leaked, deliberately or not. What got everyone's attention was the fact that neither of these mounts required additional medical assistance anymore, which was confirmed multiple times from multiple different doctors. It spikes the interest of all humans as this turns out to be a cure for almost everything. Even the missing toes on the man's right foot seemed to grow back after about a month. Unfortunately, the changes to the host have also similar effects as before in not so good ways. Though neither had issues with their interactions with others of different sex, but when they were around each other, that was something else, especially after several weeks went by. As before, the rush of hormones, along with other chemicals like adrenaline and dopamine, caused the two symbiotes to cocoon themselves right after all the physical activity was done. This formed the chrysalis up in the corners like it happened before, and this would have been a wonderful result if they were anywhere except the home planet. Within an hour of the chrysalis beginning, the chrysalis eaters began to arrive. One at first, but soon dozens were on all sides, not taking any chances. The soldiers began shooting and shooting and shooting, but the bastards are very difficult to kill just by shooting them. Their unmatched mobility made them extremely hard to hit. The strength of the creatures meant that anyone not in an exosuit would be quickly dispatched with a single strike. The heavier suits gave good protection, but the eaters just came out of nowhere and attacked, hell-bent on getting in and getting at their meal. Inside the room where the chrysalis were incubating, the two recent mounts woke up to the sound of an eater trying to break through the walls, But as strong as they are, breaking through concrete is not the easiest thing to do. The two inside realized what was coming for them, and the male was ready as the eater broke in through the door. The man struck at the eater with everything he had, but the size of the eater, with its strong muscle limbs, was able to face this man and match him strike for strike, no matter how enhanced he was. Realizing this strong biped was actually going to halt its movement, this eater shoved its stinger into the man's torso in a final act of defiance as the poison went straight into him. The man simply looked the eater into its multiple eyes, grabbing a small piece of metal and jamming it straight into the eater's head, screaming, "Fuck you!" Even after the man's body went limp, the eater seemed to stop cold and then simply fall down itself. This would have been time for celebration, but a second one showed up moments later and without hesitation, squeezing its bulbous body through the doorway and using all its legs to push itself forward, driving right into the first chrysalis it found. One can only imagine at that point the crunching and slurping it made as it tried to suck down and drink down everything in that slimy sack at the same time. Similar to a dragonfly eating a black fly, it would simply crunch it in the maw and suck in the entire chamber itself, with a strange slurping like noodles as it pulled in the last. The female inside was freaking out and used a lighter and hairspray to hurt the eater, making it scream in pain. The eater then backed away, trying to get away from the flame, but once it got out of range, it seemed to compose itself, turned towards the female, paused for just a moment before driving its maw into the woman's lower abdominal region. The armored men came in soon after and found the eater consuming the innards of the woman, and they proceeded to, as they say it, mate it up. But there might be something in the translation that's wrong. With everything at their disposal, they fought it. They fired into it until they had no weapons left. They burned it. They even beat it with their fists and drove blades into it until they knew that this thing was not going to get up again. After the fight was over, they gathered all the remaining personnel, local symbionts that seemed to stay around the camp that got a little messed up in all the fighting, and the remaining chrysalis that hadn't been eaten, and headed straight towards the facility. Hearing that another chrysalis had actually been found and brought to the station, the pixies began to take flight and looked around for it as best they could. As they did, they saw humans helping each other, attempting to repair each other, seemingly working as one, as though they had bonded together, which confused the pixies a little bit. They didn't quite understand it. But they had a mission themselves, and they eventually found the chrysalis as it was being transported with all the other symbionts. They followed it inside a large room, and they saw the security guard as he placed the chrysalis high up on the wall and bolting it into place. He then turned and motioned towards them, using the little bit of telepathy he can to bring them down, and he asked them to go talk with the other symbionts, the ones that had been brought in, the ones that had not chrysalised yet. They, of course, went over and checked on them, and after a quick discussion, it was discovered that all the symbionts agreed to do what needed to be done, so the first ones were brought over. The first one they pulled out of the little containment pod was looking very limp. This is usually how they look right before they die of starvation. The security guard noticed this as he held the symbiote in his hand, and he yelled over to the Marine to hurry the hell up and get that armor off. Once he did, he told the Marine to lay down, and he placed the symbiote on the back of the Marine. The Marine could feel this thing begin to taste his sweat before latching on, and as this was going on, he had to deal with all his other Marine buddies talking about how, be careful, he's on your back, maybe he's going to go down south, be careful, and all the other fun things the ground pounders say when they're trying to lighten the mood. They continued this until all the symbiotes had mounts of their own, and soon after it was found out that they had been able to save all but one human that had been brought down. as everything seemed to calm down and everything was being cleaned up, the wounded being placed where they could rest, the pixies decided to come down close to the guard and ask via telepathy, "Why do humans act as though they are bonded? They did not know each other. Can you explain? Like you and that new mount over there," as he motioned towards the Marine still laying on the table. The guard smiled and paused as Dr. Williams actually walked in the room and sat down right by his side, leaning down into his shoulder, obviously exhausted after surgery. He wrapped his arm around her and spoke so that everyone around could hear him. "There are several different ways humans bond. I know you've asked me this before, and I tried to explain it, but now I have a reference. It's everywhere. You see, you only understand bonding at the very physical level. Now, it's noted with humans, you're going to see that with mother and child a lot. Yet there is a bond with the father as well. It's not a physical bond, it's emotional. I know you're starting to understand that a little bit. There is also family bond, and you will see that more as your sibling hatches later." He motions over towards the chrysalis off in the corner. "Since their parents are gone, you both will find yourself acting like elder siblings. There's also the bond of friends, the bond of warriors, and so on. With humans, bonds, they run far deeper than just physical. Yet, when someone breaks that bond, or shows themselves unworthy of it, it is near impossible to get it back." The female pixie gets up close and she uses her own telepathy. "Does that mean you're bonded with everyone here now?" "You could say that's true. Some more than others." At that point, he squeezes the torso of the doc, bringing her even closer as his hand reaches down and caresses just the base of her abdomen. He then uses his other arm to bring the pixies ever closer into a very light hug for them as he's worried about breaking them. This bond here is something I truly hope you understand." It was at that moment the two pixies shared a look with each other. Without words, without telepathy, they had finally realized why they could bond so well with humans, as they realized throughout all planets, throughout all species in the galaxy, no one bonds deeper than humans. Hello everybody, this is Syntax. Thank you so much for joining me today on the final chapter of The Bonding. Before I go, I need to send out some big thank yous to a few of my supporters, and those will be Erica Gem, Guardian Sage, SS Demon, Brian Kemp, Sir, and Prozac and Pancakes. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. Everybody else, I'll see you on the next one. This is Syntax, punching out.